Okay, what this is, it's known as a Quack medical device, a hoax, box. These things like them became vogue in the 20s, 30s, and they were, some of them, rather dangerous. This particular one isn't really, but it is nevertheless absolutely useless, other than maybe a placebo effect for the patient may have gotten from such a thing. Remarkably well made for what it is. These very fine tongue and groove corners. Everything lines up. Latches, nice sturdy latches, nice sturdy carrying handle, and with this thing loaded up with cells, the battery, I imagine, was not light. So what's in this thing? Very nice hinged lid, complete instructions. Given the age of this thing, I'm surprised the condition of this. And if I have time, I'll read it to you. It's the instructions, operating instructions for the thing. And also included here is a little box with its various accoutrements in there. The thing appears to me to be complete. I think everything's there. At least everything mentioned in the instructions are there. So we'll get into what those are later. It's truly bizarre in my view. Again, things remarkably well made. Oh, well, I guess this is nickel-plated, probably brass. All these buttons, these switches, they're armatures. The couple of types of interrupters and other switches and big old graphite rheostat here, which I'll get more into later. And they also hinged this plate. Now I've already removed the two fasteners that would normally hold this in place. So this just hinges up, and giving you access to the battery box. They call this a 3-cell, what is it? Triple cell medical battery, number 180. And all the original cloth covered wires, these attached to the dry cells that went down in here. These dry cells were not much different in size than this, a little bit shorter and maybe a slight bit smaller diameter, but there were 3 of those down in this box. Get rid of that. I don't know if I can tilt this up without. Well, let's see if I can do this. I have this slammed down. The cells, the 3 cells, each would go into its own compartment, and then these wooden bits would turn and just kind of hold them in place, flopping around in there. The way this is made, it's just a piece of wood, and somehow they cut these grooves, very thin grooves, and then laid wire into those grooves. A couple of places where the wires are actually soldered, intersections that needed to interconnect. Otherwise, the wires just are clamped under washers with these nuts that go to the various buttons and terminals on the top side. This little tag here was found in here. I got this at auction. It says, "To zinc of first cell." That would no doubt have been attached to one of these leads, probably this one, maybe this one. But the zinc would be the outside terminal of a number 6 dry cell, which is what this thing used. 3 of them. And there was probably a label much like this that said connect to carbon of last cell, which would have been up here. Doesn't matter a whole lot. Point is, this thing, they call it a 3 cell because it contained 3 number 6 dry cells. It allows the doctor to select 1, 2, or 3 cell operation. Well, that just means it's running off 1.5 volts, 3 volts, or 4.5 volts, which would change the output voltage a little bit. Basically, what all this is an Odin coil. This here, sort of a transformer, low voltage in, high voltage out, with interrupters. An interrupter just being a magnetic affair, coupled magnetically with this coil that momentarily connects and disconnects the power to the primary in this coil. The output comes out through these 2 terminals, and those attached to these appliances hidden in this box. All this thing does is put out relatively high voltage DC pulses of different frequencies depending on which interrupter you use. This one happens to have 2. Here's the one here is a typical reed type of deal. The coil gets energized, there's a switch closed, coil gets energized, pulls this armature toward the coil, opens the switch, the coil disenergizes, and it repeats. So this thing, a buzzer. And near as I can tell, I haven't really gotten into this in any great detail, but near as I can tell, this coil actually has a primary and a secondary winding. The primary winding is where the battery power is going in through the interrupters. The secondary winding is more turns, and that's the high voltage output. It's got 2 interrupters. One, as I just mentioned, is your typical buzzer sort. Something like you'd find on a Model T Ford's ignition system. And the other is this sort of motor. It's a very interesting arrangement the way they've got this. The rotor consists of nothing more than a 4-lobed steel armature that's set on sort of needle bearing arrangements. Pretty crude, that, but it also has a leaf switch here that contacts 4 pins pushed or pressed into this armature, and each pin is a different height. It's the shortest one, next taller one, and then the tallest one. And what they're doing with that is through some, I would imagine, tedious and judicious adjustment of this wiper, this electrical brush, if you like. You could have this thing pulse once per revolution, twice per revolution, 3 times per revolution, or 4 times per revolution. I have played with it. It's doggone difficult to get this thing to turn with 1 pulse per revolution, which would be a very slow tick, 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 tick on the output. This thing outputs similarly to, in full volume, it outputs voltage and current energy levels similar to that of a cheapy electric fence charger. It's not going to hurt you, but it will cause you some discomfort if you get adjustments just so. As I said, the thing runs on, it's selectable through this switch to run off 1, 2, or all 3 cells, 1.5 volts, 3 volts, or 4.5 volts, just to get the thing working. I don't have any number 6 dry cells. I don't think they're manufactured anymore, and even if they are, they probably cost you an arm and a leg, so it's pointless. So I've got a bench supply here dialed up to 4.5 volts, which I can tack into here and give it the full Monty. Let's see what some of these switches do. And it's all outlined up in these instructions, but I'll, give a quick overview. This is basically the power switch. It's 2 levers. It's kind of nifty how they arranged this. These are numbered off, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So with 0 and off, the instrument was off, so you turn this dial, this lever, to 1, 2, or 3, that meaning 1 cell, 2 cell, or 3 cells. And you turn this one to 0. And that would feed 1.5, 3, or 4.5 volts into this circuit. And so thereby changing the amount of energy coming out of these high voltage terminals. In addition to that, it also has this rheostat. It's just, it appears to be some sort of a composite material with a aquadag coating on it, serving as a variable resistor, a rheostat. And they talk a little bit about that. They say, whatever you do, don't get that wet because it'll spoil it. That's the word they use, spoil it. I already know this is spoiled rotten. I have so bypassed it with this clip lead. Some current will pass through it, but it's very spotty and it's beyond its useful life unless I could recoat this with aquadag, graphite. Don't plan on doing that. That's not important. What else does this have? Since this thing puts out DC pulses, it also has an optional. You can change the polarity. Not that it would matter one iota for whatever you're doing with the thing, but for whatever reason, it's because I guess they could. They included this polarity reversal switch, and all that does is reverse the polarity of these output terminals. You may have noticed I've got a small neon lamp tied across here. Normally, there are some leads in here. These, which I'm almost certain are original to this. There are 2 of these. Yeah, another one in there. And one attaches here, the other attaches here, and then these plug into the various appliances. Let's call them in the box. Not a word really about how you use the appliances, other than some of them you might want to add some moisture to. So anyway, the output polarity, the polarity of the pulse is coming to the output, to whatever probes or things you have attached to it can be changed. Positive one way, negative the other way. And this switch controls which interrupter it's going to use. In this position, it's going to use this linear sort of interrupter, a buzzer, and in the other position, it's going to use this sort of motor to do the interrupting. The thing does work, and in certain settings and certain appliances used, I won't say it kicks like a mule, but it'll get your attention. So I'm going to cut this off as a marker, also so I can set up. I've got my power supply here already dialed in. I just got to connect it up. But I do want to cut this off and double check, make sure the focus is right, and all lighting and all that stuff. Okay, so I've got power supply hooked up here. Very difficult at all. Just picked 2 ends of this string. So I'm putting in 4.5 volts to simulate all 3 batteries, or I'm sorry, cells in place. as a battery. This thing draws a significant amount of current. The supply I'm using, it's multiple output. The output I'm using is adjustable from 0 to 5 volts. It'll easily deliver 5 amperes, which is plenty for this thing, and it uses, you know, just about every bit of it. I'm watching the ammeter here. I don't bother getting into that. Just trust me, this thing, these number 6 dry cells, those could supply some significant current. I remember as a kid playing with those things, and boy, yeah, you could heat up a 14 gauge wire red with those things. But anyway, and this clip lead I have here is just to short out, to bypass this rheostat, which isn't really working anymore. Now, look down in here, don't see any shorts. Just kind of pop him down. Okay, so, let's see, power supply here, turned off. My bench supply is turned on. I'll set this to 3. Excuse me. I'll set this to use the gap, the linear gap. This doesn't matter right now. And when I move this armature to the 0 labeled button, that will complete a circuit, and we should get some buzzing. Along with that, this neon lights up. Now keep in mind it takes about 90 volts or so for this to fire. Once it does fire, it puts a load across this, which is going to clamp the voltage down. So the voltage coming out of this actually gets a bit higher than is required to flash this. Even with this on there, you put your hand across this, it tickles you. I'll do it. And yeah, not terribly uncomfortable. You'll be able to see, hold on. I'm going to flip the polarity switch while it's running. I don't know if you can hear me speaking while this thing's buzzing. And I'm not sure how well it's going to show up. But you may be able to see the glow flip from one pole piece in this lamp to the other to indicate the change in polarity of the output. So that's what that does. Simple polarity change output. It's interesting, I notice a little bit brighter in one way than the other. That probably has more to do with some characteristics of this lamp. Not sure. And so that's using this interrupter, which itself is adjustable to change the frequency of make and break, oscillation if you like. So I should demonstrate that, turn her on. Really get it going low with this. Little buzz there. And you tighten it up. And it's got a jam nut on it. I mean, it's got a jam nut on it, so you get it something that the patient seems to tolerate. You just leave it there, lock the jam nut, and let them catch their buzz. And of course, you could adjust, fine-tune the intensity of the output to the appliances with this rheostat. So that's with the interrupter. Then it's got this other type of interrupter. which essentially is a motor, but it affords a slower, potentially, and no pun intended, a slower pulse rate out of from the output of this thing. And that's accomplished by just moving this over to the other button. For some reason, this one's labeled S and this one's labeled W. Not sure why they arbitrarily picked those letters. But anyway, in order to get this to work, you actually have to give this thing a spin. And there it goes. You can see the thing spinning around. And there are all sorts of adjustments that can be made with this to tune it, if not to the patient, at least to your hearing. This thing, it's pretty crude. You can change the spring tension on this wiper, the brush that completes the circuit with these pins that are pressed into here. And by raising and lowering this brush, you can change the pulses per revolution. Good luck getting it to spin without all 4 pole pieces being involved. Maybe a lubrication. But it works the way it is. I'm not going to fix that. I did have to do a repair on this switch. There was a grommet of sort in there. Knocking the tubes over here. That it just wore out and crumbled. I had some nylon parts. I was able to fashion something similar to it. That seems to work just fine. I do have the original part, and that will stay with this for the next poor slob that gets interested in it. So, seen it run. I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect all this clip leadage. And turn off that bench supply. Well, I tell you that that light there is hot. I'll get rid of this neon. And let's see. Go ahead. At least put one screw back in here, just to keep things from flopping around. Okay, so what's in here? What are we killing at? Oh, I think we're good. Let me check real quick. Like the cops say, let me check real quick. I suppose that'll work. Alright, so what's in here? Attachments. And it's a really well-made cabinet and everything. Let's see, there's a... Oh, see that? Warts and all, man. Alright. Try not to dump everything. There's what I was trying to get at, I don't know if it's going to show here, but there's a decal there. Signal Electric Manufacturing Company. The word signal in the middle. Menominee? I guess I'm saying that right. Menominee, Michigan. Menominee. Sorry. Anyway, what's in here? The 2 wire sets, complete with the probes, and these would attach there and here, and then the other ends would plug into these various attachments. There are a pair of these look like nickel-plated. I think they're probably, yeah, they're not steel. They're probably brass, nickel-plated brass, and these just plugged in 2 holes inside, and presumably one or both of these would be gripped by the hands like that, and you jump, 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 or jump, 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 jump. So there's those. And then there are a pair of these things, and the probes, the wires, would attach. So, tighten this down. These appear to be cotton or something. In fact, there's some moth damage to this one, at least. And it mentions in the instructions that these were meant to be moistened, you know, to make it conductive. It's in there. Interesting. These pads are sewn onto this metal disc. You know, a lot of trouble went into the manufacture of this thing, and it did nothing except maybe make the patient feel better. So there's, which I guess is nothing, 2 of these kind of probes in there. Lord knows where a hair physician would put those on your body. And then there's this plate. Because of the curvature of this, I'm thinking this would be something that would go on your thigh, maybe, on your side. I don't know. And there's a place up here for the wire probe to plug in, connect. Ugh, I don't even want to think of that. Now, the most strange piece of this is this. Move this stuff out of the way. This, it looks like one of those Hart's doggy brushes, or cat animal brush, you know, with the nails, metal nails in it. Wooden handle, and there's some kind of a, well, it looks like a kind of a rubber support for all these nails. And somehow they're connected electrically to this hole, which is a socket for the probe. I'm not sure, but I'm going to hazard a guess that that was used to prevent hair loss, or maybe dandruff. I guess depending on which body hair it was used on, your guess is going to be as good as mine. So anyway, near as I can tell, it's all here, such as it is. And I think about this. I wonder just how many people were, shall we say, serviced by this machine or something like it. And do they really experience relief from whatever ailed them? I kind of suspect that many of them did, because these things like them became a fairly popular item back in those days. So, like I said, I got this one at auction. I can't remember what it cost me. Hopefully, some other poor slob will have and appreciate it as much as I have. Except for, trying to get these things to fit in this. What am I hitting here? There we go. Everything has to be just so. So, there's that. A couple of different variations of these. This is the one I like best because it seems complete, and it works just fine with minimum attention. So if anybody else collecting these or enjoys them, enjoyed this. See it.